I was 3 beers deep into a Tuesday night when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in almost 8 years. Marcus Chen, my college roommate, the guy who used to steal my cereal and leave his socks everywhere, and somehow became my best friend anyway. We'd lost touch after graduation, the way people do. A few likes on social media, the occasional happy birthday text. But a phone call? That was different. My thumb hovered over the screen. Something in my chest tightened, some instinct I couldn't name. I answered. "Ryan," his voice came through, rough and tired in a way I'd never heard before. "Hey man, I know it's been forever." Marcus. "Yeah, wow, how are you?" I muted the TV, suddenly very aware of how quiet my apartment was. He paused and I could hear him breathing, gathering something. "I'm actually in town. I know this is random, but could we meet up? There's something I need to talk to you about. In person." My heart started doing this weird thing, beating just a little too fast. "Of course. When were you thinking? Tomorrow? There's that coffee shop we used to go to, the one near campus, Bruno's. Is it still there?" Bruno's? God, I hadn't thought about that place in years. The cracked leather booths, the terrible jazz music, the way Marcus always ordered his coffee black while I loaded mine with cream and sugar. "Yeah, it's still there. 2 o'clock. "Perfect. And Ryan," his voice dropped lower, "thank you. This means a lot." After we hung up, I sat there in the blue glow of my muted television, trying to figure out why my hands were shaking. I knew Marcus had gotten married. I'd seen the photos on Facebook 5 years ago. Sarah, her name was. Blonde, pretty smile, worked in marketing. I'd liked the photo and felt this strange hollowness I couldn't explain, so I'd stopped checking his profile after that. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about college, about the apartment we'd shared junior and senior year. It was a terrible place, really. The heater only worked in one room, the bathroom door didn't lock, and our neighbours upstairs had a bowling ball they apparently dropped every night at 2 a.m. But somehow, those were the best 2 years of my life. I remembered the way Marcus looked in the morning, stumbling out of his room with his hair sticking up in every direction, squinting against the light. The way he'd sprawl across our beat-up couch while we watched movies, his long legs taking up most of the space, and I'd end up pressed against the armrest, hyper-aware of every inch between us. The way my stomach would flip when he'd walk around shirtless after a shower, water still beading on his shoulders. I'd told myself it was normal, that straight guys noticed when their friends were attractive, that the ache I felt when he started dating Sarah our senior year was just about losing time with my best friend. I'd gotten very good at lying to myself. The next day, I changed my shirt 3 times before leaving. I told myself I was being ridiculous. This was Marcus, my old roommate, who was apparently going through something based on that phone call. I should be thinking about him, not about whether this blue button-down made me look better than the grey one. I got to Bruno's 50 minutes early and ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I just held it, watching the door, my leg bouncing under the table, and then he walked in and my breath caught. He looked different. Older, obviously. We were both 30 now. But it was more than that. His hair was shorter, more styled. He'd filled out a little, in a good way. He was wearing a dark green sweater that did things for his eyes I wasn't prepared for. But mostly he looked tired. There were shadows under those eyes, a tightness around his mouth. He saw me and something crossed his face. Relief, maybe, or something more complicated. "Ryan." He slid into the booth across from me, and suddenly we were 19 again, except we weren't. "You look good, man. Really good." "So do you." It came out quieter than I meant it to. "It's good to see you." We did the small talk dance for a few minutes. My job in graphic design, his work in software development, the weather, how the city had changed, but I could feel the weight of whatever he wasn't saying, hanging between us like humidity before a storm. Finally, he wrapped both hands around his coffee cup and looked at me. Really looked at me, in a way that made my skin feel too tight. "I'm divorced," he said, "as of 3 months ago. It's final." "Marcus, I'm so sorry." I reached across the table without thinking, my hand covering his. His skin was warm. He looked down at our hands but didn't pull away. "Don't be," he said softly. It was the right thing, for both of us. Sarah, she's a good person, but I wasn't fair to her. I wasn't honest. He turned his hand over, his fingers curling slightly against mine. I wasn't honest with myself. My mouth went dry. What do you mean? He took a breath and I watched his chest rise and fall under that green sweater. Do you remember the night before graduation? We stayed up all night in our apartment, drinking cheap beer and talking about everything and nothing, I remembered. God, I remembered. We'd sat on our balcony as the sky turned from black to grey to pink. He'd been sitting close enough that our shoulders touched. At one point, he'd leaned his head on my shoulder, and I'd frozen, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid he'd realise what it meant to me. I remember, I said. I almost kissed you that night. His voice was barely above a whisper. I wanted to so badly. But then the sun came up, and you started talking about your job offer in Seattle, and Sarah texted me, and I convinced myself I'd imagined it. That what I was feeling was just, I don't know, nostalgia. Fear of change. Anything but what it actually was. The coffee shop sounds faded away. There was just him, his hand under mine, his eyes locked on my face. And what was it? I asked, even though I was terrified of the answer. I was in love with you. He said it simply, like he was telling me the sky was blue. I've been in love with you since sophomore year, when you stayed up all night helping me study for that chemistry exam, even though you had your own finals. When you made me soup when I had the flu and didn't even complain about how disgusting I was. When you laughed at my stupid jokes and called me out on my bullshit and just existed in my space, like you belonged there. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 8 years, 8 entire years. I married Sarah because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, he continued, because she was wonderful and pretty and my parents loved her, and it made sense on paper. But Ryan, every time she touched me, I thought about you. Every time I tried to be present in my own marriage, part of me was still in that shitty apartment sitting too close to you on that couch, pretending I didn't want to know what your lips tasted like. Marcus. His name came out broken. I told her. 6 months ago I finally told her the truth. That I was gay, that I'd been lying to both of us, that I'd married her while in love with someone else. She was angry, and she had every right to be. But she also said she'd known on some level, that I'd never really been there. He squeezed my hand. The divorce was hard, but it was also, I don't know, like I could finally breathe. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why wait until now? Because I was terrified, he said simply. What if you didn't feel the same way? What if I'd ruined your life by not being brave enough 8 years ago? What if you'd moved on, and I was just this pathetic guy hung up on his college roommate? He laughed, but it was shaky. I've picked up the phone to call you about 100 times in the last 3 months, but yesterday I was cleaning out some boxes and I found this photo of us. We were at that Halloween party junior year, remember? You were a pirate and I was a vampire, and someone took a picture of us. You're laughing at something and I'm looking at you like, well, like you hung the moon. I remembered that party. I remembered his arm around my shoulders for the photo, the way I'd leaned into him, letting myself pretend for just a moment. I still have that photo too, I admitted. It's in a box in my closet. I couldn't throw it away. His eyes widened. Ryan? You weren't the only one who wanted to kiss someone that night before graduation, I said, and watched his face transform. I came out to myself sophomore year. I've dated guys. I've had relationships. But Marcus, none of them were you. No one has ever been you. For a moment, we just stared at each other across that table in Bruno's coffee shop, the place where we'd studied for exams and complained about professors, and slowly, without realizing it, fallen in love. 8 years of missed chances and wrong timing and fear sat between us, but so did something else, possibility. I don't want to rush this, Marcus said carefully. I'm fresh out of a divorce. I'm still figuring out who I am. But Ryan, I drove 6 hours to see you because I couldn't spend one more day not telling you the truth. I don't know what this is or what it could be, but I had to know if maybe, possibly, you might want to find out together. I stood up, my legs shaky, and slid into the booth next to him instead of across from him, close enough that our thighs touched, that I could feel the heat of him. I've waited 8 years, I said. I can wait a little longer. We can take this slow. We can figure it out together. He turned to face me, and we were so close I could count his eyelashes, could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Can I ask you something I should have asked 8 years ago? Anything. Can I kiss you? I answered by closing the distance between us. His lips were soft and warm and tasted like coffee and everything I'd been too afraid to let myself want. His hand came up to cut my face, gentle and sure, and I felt something in my chest crack open. Not breaking, but blooming. like I'd been holding my breath for 8 years and could finally exhale. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I can't believe I waited this long," he whispered. "We both did," I said, "but we're here now." And we were. In a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and old books, in a booth with cracked leather seats, with terrible jazz playing in the background. It wasn't perfect. We had a lot to figure out. He was still healing from his divorce, still coming into himself. I was still scared of getting hurt, of this not being real. But his hand was in mine, solid and warm, and when I looked at him he was looking back, and for the first time in 8 years I wasn't pretending. "So what now?" he asked. "Now?" I smiled. "Now we order terrible coffee and talk, really talk, about everything, and then maybe tomorrow we do it again, and the day after that. We take it one day at a time and see where this goes." "I'd like that," he said. "I'd really like that." We stayed at Bruno's until they started stacking chairs on tables. We talked about college, about the years we'd missed, about coming out and being scared and all the what-ifs that had haunted us both. We talked about his divorce and my failed relationships and how sometimes the right person is standing in front of you but the timing is wrong. And we talked about now, about taking things slow, about building something real and honest. When we finally left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus walked me to my car, his hand brushing against mine every few steps, like he was making sure I was still there. At my car, he pulled me into a hug and I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing him in. "Thank you for answering the phone," he said into my hair. "Thank you for calling," I said back. We made plans to have dinner the next night, and the night after that. We were taking it slow, but we were taking it together, and that was everything. As I drove home, I caught myself smiling at nothing, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Marcus. "I'm already counting the hours until I see you again. Is that too much?" I typed back, "Not even close." That night I pulled out the box from my closet and found that Halloween photo. Marcus was right. The way he was looking at me in that picture, it was unmistakable. And the way I was leaning into him, my smile unguarded and real that told its own story. We'd been writing this love story for 8 years, I realised. We just hadn't known we were allowed to read it out loud. Sometimes love doesn't happen in a lightning bolt moment. Sometimes it's slow and quiet and patient. Sometimes it waits 8 years for you to be ready, for both of you to be brave enough to speak the truth. And sometimes, just sometimes, your college roommate calls you after his divorce and tells you everything you'd been too afraid to hope for. I'd spent so long thinking I'd missed my chance with Marcus, but maybe there are no missed chances, just different paths to the same destination. Maybe we both needed those 8 years to become the people who could build something real together. Maybe all that waiting wasn't wasted time, but necessary time. 3 months later, Marcus moved back to the city. We'd been taking it slow, dating properly, learning each other all over again, but also learning each other for the first time without the weight of pretending. And when he asked if maybe, eventually when we were ready, I'd want to be roommates again, I said yes before he could finish the question. Because this time, we weren't hiding. This time, when I fell asleep on his shoulder during a movie, he kissed my forehead. This time, when he walked around after a shower, I could look. This time, we were writing our story together, out loud, in broad daylight. The morning he moved in, we stood in our new apartment, boxes everywhere, and he pulled me close. "Thank you for waiting for me," he said. "Thank you for coming back," I said. And we kissed in the middle of our living room, in the space that was ours, finally, completely, without apology. It had taken 8 years and a divorce and more courage than either of us knew we had, but we were here, together, and that was worth every moment of waiting. Total char count, 16,847.